I think I ask you this every training camp. Do you have a clearer picture now of how you're going to be used than maybe you did in past years? Or is it still being figured out as we go?
Yeah, I think it's still being figured out. I think the hard thing, right, obviously it's the first year with a new staff and we haven't had a game week, you know? So I think so much of training camp for me is you're trying to install your base plays, right? Let's install the offense and let's get some reps and time on task with that. And that becomes a little bit challenging, right, for a guy like me. Now I feel like Clint and the staff has done a really good job of incorporating me doing different things. So yes, I do feel like I have, you know, a good idea, but I still think that they're figuring what that is going to look like come, you know, week one.
Taysom, have you now played more positions on offense than you haven't?
I mean, yeah, I've I don't know. I mean, I've kind of checked everyone off the list except the O-line, you know. I don't do a ton of stuff, you know, as a split out receiver, but you know, there's a little bit of everything sprinkled in there.
How would you say it is different for you? Like, what's the biggest thing that's different in this system for you than maybe the last couple of years so far?
God, it's a good question. Again, it's a little bit hard because I really don't know what that's going to look like, you know, as we get into the season. But I feel like the use of the fullback in this system that role has been expanded, you know, in this system, and so I would say that I have done more of that than I've really done. So that's probably the first answer that comes to mind.
Did you talk about how this is a bit of a? Go ahead.
Playing quarterback, had that helped mentally to be able to kind of handle the volume of what you had to do mentally?
Yeah, it has, you know, and I've always said this before, like, you know, I was in the last system for 7 years, you know, so as we had this transition, I was learning everything, you know, through the mind of a quarterback, so that transition made it a little bit easier. Now, learning a new system this year is a little bit, you know, harder because I can't just focus on a thing, you know. I'm trying to learn as much as I can, but I think having the experience of playing quarterback, learning concepts as a whole, I think has certainly helped me.
Dia talked about how for him it seemed a little refreshing to see you have a different role.
Say it again.
Dia talked about how it was refreshing that you had a bit of a different role compared to the past. Do you have that same sentiment, or is it just a little bit more mentally taxing?
No, I would say, look, I'm not like Cam Jordan old, you know, but I've been in an assistant for a while now, and so I think it is nice to be challenged in different ways, you know, and from that standpoint, that has been fun for me. It's been a challenge, but it has been fun, you know. So whether you call that refreshing or, you know, fun for me, that has been a fun experience.
Are you enjoying being at the fullback spot?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that our defensive guys will come up to me and make jokes like, "Oh, where are you playing today?" Like, we don't know how to call your personnel when you're in the huddle, you know, and they're saying, "Hey, Seven's in the huddle," and so they have to be able to know that could mean a lot of different things, you know. So the more that I can do there, and then the more I can do other places, I think it just makes us harder to defend.
Isn't that's part of the intent in terms of how to impact the opposing defenses in the regular season as well, right?
For sure.
To create that type of confusion.
Yes, for sure.
How do you experience any of that in games too, in terms of defensive players making remarks to you about that?
Yeah. No, I've heard a number of different things. Or if we'll sign guys, you know, that are here for the first year, and they'll talk about what that was like getting prepped to play us in a game week and stuff. So I've had some fun conversations with, you know, new teammates that I've played through the years.
Is there a sense of pride in that for you, that you create that sort of?
I don't know. I don't know that I really think of it that way, to be honest. But it is a fun conversation. And look, at the end of the day, like, we're all chasing an experience, right? We're all chasing the expectation in the NFL. I don't care who you are, what team you're on, the expectation doesn't change, right? Like, the expectation is to win. The expectation is to play in the postseason. And, we've talked about this in the past here, that when you're on a team that wins and you go and have this postseason run, you become part of the NFL history. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? That's all we're chasing.
When's the last time you threw a pass? Has thrown a pass?
You're talking like in a practice in a team setting, or what?
I don't know if you're working out over the summer, like you still throw?
Yeah, I throw balls. I throw a ball. I'll throw a ball every day at some point, just to make sure I still can.
Has that been weird for you not to throw as maybe frequently as, I know you've been doing this a couple of years now?
No, it hasn't. I think it's one of those things that I still feel really comfortable and confident doing that. And it's trying to spend time on things that I, haven't had a ton of time on task doing. And so I try to do my best at getting exposure to all those things. So that is something that I'll never let, slip.
And then I think back in the spring you told us that when you had a frank conversation with Clint, how much of that was, that frankness was hey, maybe you're not going to be throwing as much as you're used to? Did that cover any of that?
We haven't really talked about that. I think as we talked earlier, I think that what I'm going to be doing is we're still trying to figure that out, So, and when you get to training camp, you're not game planning stuff, right? You're not putting some of these, maybe more exotic packages that you would call, but we're just trying to get our base stuff in, and we're 3 installs into it, so we haven't hit any of those unique packages that you would say. So I don't know if that's fair to say. I haven't talked to Clint about that specifically.
Jason, when we're watching you guys, there's a lot more play action than we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
I'm just curious from your experience as a quarterback, what that does to help you out, if anything specifically, clearing the picture or whatever it might be.
From just an offensive perspective in general?
Yeah.
Well, first, I would say that that's fair to say. I think that the play action, naked movement stuff has been more of an emphasis this year. But I would say that we have made more of an emphasis in running the ball. I think that we've ran outside zone more than we historically have here. But the intent is to get really good at that so we can run nakeds and boots and stuff off of that. To go along with that, I just think that makes us harder to defend, So that definitely has been an emphasis, and I think that's something that will carry throughout the season.
So, that just goes into one of the multiple different ways that you're trying to present the same picture.
Yeah.
And then make the defense basically react slower.
For sure. Yeah. But I think that's what this offense is kind of built around, right? Run outside zone and set up everything else,
When you've been learning this playbook and talking about that not challenge, but that fresh approach of learning something new, how much of that is the motions and that? Do you enjoy kind of pre-snap stuff or?
Yeah. Look, I think that's probably from what Clint does. That's where the exotic stuff comes in. We're going to run what we run, but man, we are going to give you a ton of different looks. We're going to give you a ton of different movements, shifts, motions, and whether that's across the ball, out to in and out. So I think that that's what makes this offense harder to stop, but it does add more stress onto us as players, So we're getting a lot of reps in doing this stuff, and I think it is challenging guys, but I think so far everyone has done a really nice job of learning it.
Jason, as you've gotten later in your career, has there been times where you've had to kind of step back and say think about more how much contact you take and whether it's
necessary? Like, are there points that, you know, you have to kind of fight against your own nature to kind of run like a snowplow, or, you know, get out of bounds in terms of, hey, I want to be available all season long? How do you kind of measure that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a couple things. The first answer is no, I don't think about that. And I would say, as soon as I start thinking that way, like, it's time for me to be done, you know? I've always played the game one way, and if I can't do that anymore, then I'm not going to do it, you know? I think this game requires too much. My teammates are putting too much into it, that if I have to start thinking along those lines, it's not fair to them, it's not fair to me. But as far as, you know, thinking more about, you know, my career, I would be lying if I said I, you know, haven't become a little more nostalgic, you know, as I've thought back to, you know, my career, college days, to how I ended up here, you know. So I have been a little bit more that way, just as a whole.
Is it a defensive snap on your career bucket list now?
No, I mean, it's not on my bucket list, but look, it's always there, you know. We kind of always joke, but there have been a few situations where, you know, a few guys went down, and all of a sudden, I had a few defensive coaches coming to me saying, "Hey, we might need you to do this," but
like the other team's gonna try a Hail Mary at the end of the half. Something like that, would that be what you could do?
yeah, I think that would count, but no, I don't think so. Those guys are so well trained to do all this stuff that no, I don't know. But never say never.
You remember when the Patriots took Troy Brown, the receiver, and put him in defensive back in a pinch?
Yep, I remember that, and I think Gronk did that too for them, not in a pinch, but in a Hail Mary situation, right? I think they've kind of done some things that way.
Thanks. What are your thoughts about the kickoff rule, the new kickoff rule?
Yeah, I think it's exciting. You know, I think it's hard to know how that's going to affect the game, but man, I think it's going to add like some really exciting plays in our game. And as you think of historically what that play has been over the last few years, you know, statistically it's really been a non-factor. You know, it really hasn't been a play. So I think it's an exciting thing. I'm excited to see, you know, how that plays out, but I think it's going to add a lot of fun and a lot of excitement to the game, to fans, to us as teammates. Like, it'll be fun.
Either left tackle, guard, which one would you use on the line?
None of those. None of those.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Stacey.